Yeah, we discussed with, good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, and we are here with you as we are every day to discuss the generative AI news that you need to know or don't need to know. We rate every piece as essential, important, or optional for the AI leader to pay attention to, and we'll debate why that's the case. So today we have, I think, 7 articles to go through. So we're going to look at 2 competitors in the data side of the generative AI space, Snowflake and DataBricks, which have some announcements that we'll talk about. We'll talk about the different philosophies of some of the most active VC investors in terms of the open source v closed source debate and much more. So we will jump right in so we can get through everything for everybody within our 30-minute window. I will bring Ankaj to the stage. Ankaj, kick us off.
Thanks, David. So the first one that we have for today comes from Nvidia. So Nvidia has introduced a generative physical AI. It is a combination of Nvidia Isaac and Omniverse platform, where you can just tell robots to do something and they will learn how to do it.
Yes, good old reinforcement learning. Paul, what did you think about this one?
You know, we've talked a lot. Well, yeah. So I'm rating this one as important. We've talked a lot about the rapid increase of robots and machines in parallel to the Gen AI stuff, and I think this whole concept of mapping reality and having robots train robots is a really important development. We've seen it at many of the MIT talks, enthusiasm around it, and AI leaders should have this on the radar screen. I think the things that get people's emotions, like we're looking right now, are more advanced ones, but I think things that relate this to, checking process quality at in lines, and what we talked at, I think one of the shows talking about Amazon looking at defects in packaging, are much more simple things that these things will have a more immediate impact. So from my standpoint, important.
Yes, and we get to watch a video as opposed to read. So,
Yes.
I mean, why not have people do this one? What do you think, John?
Yeah, I also rated it important. I think this video does a great job of laying out how to think about the problem, why generative AI allows for more general training of robots. And, look, it's a vendor announcement. The other thing is that it makes you bullish on Nvidia stock, even at its high price. Not that I'm making a stock recommendation, but I thought that even though it's a vendor, it's clearly in the interest of Nvidia to push this forward, and they're announcing this environment. I just thought it was very well done in terms of explaining why we should care.
Sorry, I was on mute. I agree, and we will go with important on this one. Very cool video. Next one, Ankaj.
Okay, so the next one is an announcement of an acquisition from DataBricks. So they have acquired a startup called Tabular, and they are doing it for getting more data out of enterprises.
Right, so I'll kick us off here. So look, DataBricks has been on an acquisition tear, right? Last year, 3 acquisitions, including most notably Mosaic ML. This year, this is their 3rd one. They acquired Einblick in February, Lilac, I think that was in March, and now Tabular. So, I mean, the actual announcement, I think, reading this, I would call it optional, but I think it's just important to keep this company on the radar, right? I mean, they're building up their capabilities a lot. They're as I said, the kind of the data side of the equation, although, they do have the full stack, right? You have the capability to build models, et cetera. So I'm going to go optional on this one, but again, important to just keep this company in mind. And they may be going public soon, right? They're looking for an opening there. What did you guys think?
Yeah, I thought it was optional also. I mean, they really are trying to make sure they, keep up with Snowflake, who already has a solution in this area. I think the notion of open data formats, and the iceberg format, which, allows for very different kinds of data types, is going to be important, because so much of generative AI's value, I think, is going to come from taking unstructured or semi-structured or differently structured data and bringing it into analysis. So, as a vendor because this is a vendor announcement and so forth, I gave it optional, and Snowflake's already out there. But the other thing, I'm here in San Francisco as part of a meeting at a venture. I was part of a data panel last night at a venture company was started by Ray Lane, the guy who used to run Oracle, and data. There's 20,000 people here at the for the Snowflake conference. So this whole issue of enterprise data is just on fire.
Absolutely. Okay. Any debates there, Paul? Or are you happy with that rating?
Oh yeah, no, definitely optional. DataBricks needs to be on there. I mean, someone's been through buying 4 companies. There's acquisition is one, and an integrating second one. But in terms of our news today, this is optional.
All right, optional it is. Ankash.
Okay. So the next 2 articles, they seem to be slightly linked. So US has delayed AI chip exports to Middle East because they have concerns that China can access this tech via data centers in Middle East. And then related to this is there's a Saudi fund which has invested in China's effort to create a rival to OpenAI.
Right. The chip wars are real, folks. I'm actually headed down to Washington, D.C. next week to speak to Gregory Allen, who is a big expert in this space, works with the DoD, knows where all the bodies are buried here, to talk about this very topic. Paul, what did you think about this?
Oh my gosh, John, there's global competition.
There we go.
What a surprise. The bird flies south in the winter. Optional.
Yeah, I think that it's pretty obvious that AI is a critical part of the national defense, and that I think this also relates back to the government control stuff that we're going to talk about later. In terms of the Anderson, the Reid Hoffman argument. But I did as optional as well.
I mean, the only thing is this trend line of, oil was a material national resource that moved the rise and fall of nations and nation power, and is AI intelligence, the whole stack, chip all the way up, going to be the same thing. And it may well be, but this option definitely optional for now.
Yeah, these 2 articles might not be the ones that I point AI leaders to keep up with this issue, but it's super critical. Okay, like the fact that the chips could all go away if China takes over Taiwan is a risk that should be on every leader's radar, right? Because almost every company relies on semiconductors in some way. And what happens to the development of AI, the progress, if all of a sudden there are no more advanced chips that can be made, right? So to me, this is not an issue to ignore. I just don't think that these 2 articles quite capture what you would want to kind of know to brush up on this topic.
I think that's well put, Adam. Adam, sorry, David. That the Winston Churchill, right, was the one that really pushed hard for access to oil in the Middle East. As a guy in the British Navy, we should have had a Winston Churchill on semiconductor manufacturing, because we are so dependent on both the Netherlands for the lithography, and the Taiwanese for the manufacture, and those, I think, were just as the old saying goes, penny wise and pound foolish to let those be completely dependent on international sources. Well, not completely, but almost completely dependent on international sources for that. I think was a national security risk that we could have avoided. But anyway, the Biden CHIPS Act is trying to fix some of that, right? And
yeah, definitely. It'll take years, though. I mean, it's going to take years.
Sure.
Taiwan manufactures 90% of the most advanced chips. 90%.
Yeah.
70% of all the world's chips of any type I mean, talk about serious concentration risk. I mean, this is a
Yeah.
real thing.
Yeah, I mean,
This gets to the, I mean, this is why I think there's the good lessons to learn from the global manufacturers have been dealing with global supply issues for, 30 years. And I think AI leaders historically, in my experience, have not thought about what is your digital supply chain look like and where are the risks and disruptions. And you're highlighting one in here, AI talent's another one, getting locked into another vendor, but thinking through for your digital transformation plan for the next 3 years, what is your digital intelligence supply chain look like at all different levels, and where are the most vulnerabilities? And most companies can't do anything about the Taiwan, but they can certainly think through, what would disruptions look like, and do we have contingency plans or not? Or we're going to be like a lot of these companies physically were so focused on China and offshore cargo stuff that when COVID hit and they shut down some of the plants, they jammed up, and you couldn't get paint for 6 months for a certain color at hardware stores because of a single-threaded supply chain.
Yeah, there'll be a world of hurt if the supply chains gets disrupted for this compared to what we saw at COVID. I mean, think 10 times that, right? Okay, so lots of debate, but these aren't necessarily the articles that we want you to check out to tune into this issue. So we will go optional on these, but important on this topic.
David, someone needs to do analysis. I think we spend a lot of minutes, or at least I do, on the optional. Like, we get something optional, we beat the living hell out of it.
Well, no, I think it's that sometimes, like this one, the topic isn't necessarily optional. It's just the particular article, right? So it stirs a debate that I think is valuable, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to read this particular article on the topic.
Well stated.
All right, optional it is. On to the next one.
Okay, so the next one comes from Trufit, which is using GenAI to help online shoppers find clothes that fit.
All right, Trufit is one of those companies where you're using something that they've created in the background of another company, so you don't really know about them, but you know about them. They have clients such as Urban Outfitters, Forever 21, JCPenney, and basically they supply the data or information on a retailer's website that helps you figure out what size that you should buy of clothing, which we know is the biggest issue and source of returns for online shopping. I know I certainly struggle with it. So they've now kind of upgraded their capabilities here with generative AI, and they're kind of coming out of the dark, right? They're going to offer this on their own platform. I think it's a notable use case. I don't know if I would go to important on this one, but John, I saw that you did. So
Yep.
Tell us why.
Yeah, I think it's well, to me, it's a great example of a very practical thing. I mean, with return rates of over 17%, I mean that's a huge cost of e-commerce, and the idea that I think there are two important points. One is that it's the next step in aggregation of customer using Gen AI to integrate customer behavior and customer options in a way that does customization down to the individual, which I think is super important. The other thing is from a market structure standpoint, it gives you an alternative. The other retailers need an alternative to Amazon owning all that information, right? Because Amazon has their own solution. If Amazon owns all that information about, my behavior and size and fit, and the aggregation of options against that size fit model, that's really bad for the other retailers. So I thought it was a great illustration of mass customization, and also the importance of having alternatives to the cloud giants.
All right. Any further thoughts on this one, Paul, Adam? Nothing. Okay. John, you win by the silence of others. We'll go important on that one.
When it's full agreement, I think it's almost not interesting debate, but
Okay, Ankaj, what do we have here?
Okay, the next one comes from Snowflake. So Snowflake's Data Cloud Summit is going on, and there are some big announcements from Snowflake.
All right. Well, John, since you're out there with those 20,000 people, although I know you're not out there for this particular conference, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I was kind of on the fence, important or optional. I gave it optional because they lay out a whole bunch of new capabilities in terms of the ability to do different data types, transparency, this whole notion of not getting lock into the data vendor. I think it's interesting that the people using the model should be thinking the same thing. That it's funny how people seem to be more concerned about locking on data than they are locking on models, which I think is a mistake, because I think getting locked in on the OpenAI models is probably going to be at least as bad, if not maybe worse, than getting locked in on data. But anyway, we have this duopoly of Snowflake and DataBricks, and there's a lot of useful new capabilities that they're announcing, but I don't think that this is essential or important for our AI leader.
All right. So you seemed like you convinced yourself that it was optional by the end after being on the fence.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, should our well, let me make the case the other way. Our AI leader should be up to date on what the announcements are from the major vendors, right? So from that point of view, I guess I could argue important. All right, let's go important.
I'll try and tip the scales for important, John, and it's a bit of what you're alluding to there. I just got home, so I just had a quick look at it, but it's more to what we were talking about before when we were on the DataBricks side of things. But it highlights a lot of the capabilities that it's important for the AI leader to be considering. Right. Yeah. It might be that they don't go with Snowflake, but the announcements that Snowflake is making are important things that they should be thinking about, and what their posture is going to be and what their strategy is for how they're going to approach these topics and these integrations.
Yeah.
So I think that makes it worthwhile it's a pretty short read, but it emphasizes some really key capabilities that are coming to market, and whether it's with Snowflake or not, I think they should be thinking about them.
Yeah.
All right. So what's our rationale for Snowflake as important and DataBricks as optional? Is it because this one goes a little deeper onto what the offerings are?
Well, DataBricks is just a straight up acquisition of one of these capabilities. This lays out a whole bunch.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay. Just checking. Important on this one.
David, one other thing I just want to highlight in this, I think what's really changed in the corporate market was last year, people were figuring out what AI was, doing pilots, and the 99% of the focus was on this B2C public LLM. What do I need to go to chat OpenAI and do it? This year, people are really starting to figure out it's all about my data. It's all about RAG. It's all about what I have. And these vendors are right in the middle of that. And that's where the economic value is going to be driven, is your data with capabilities on the side, not these public LLMs out there.
All right. We've got an important tag, and we'll go on to our next article, please. Ankaj.
So the last one for today is a Forbes article which talks about how the billionaires are fighting on AI this time.
Okay, interesting read. I would say I'd go optional on this one. So this talks about the different philosophies of two big investors in the space. Of course, Mark Andreessen, Vinod Khosla. We just saw Khosla a month or so ago at the MIT conference talking about his views, which are that the most advanced models should remain closed source. On the other hand, you have Andreessen, who is squarely in the open source camp, and both of their investments sort of reflect what their philosophies are. And the article also talks about other players that are on one side or the other. I felt like there's some interesting thoughts in here on, why open source, why closed source, but I didn't feel like it was anything new. So I went optional on this one, but curious as to what others think. What do you think, John?
I'm usually a person that thinks that the government, should be setting policy and so forth, and wise, constraints. But as I read the governmental, the things that the Europeans put out, and the Biden administration put out, I think that the definition of terms is going to be so hard in enforcement, like, whether or not a model can cause harm, and the Europeans have the levels of, thing. I think those are so hard to define. I'm more in the Anderson camp on this thing, So first of all, in terms of the article, I would give it important, because I think it's not a bad back and forth. Plus, you have the personalities involved and so forth, and what some of the important issues are on regulation or not. And on this one, I think the underlying technology is moving so quickly, and the distribution of intelligence is so broad. And I think I want more of a market in this, where people are competing. So I'm more in the Anderson camp personally, but in terms of the article, I think I would give it important.
Okay, we're split. Adam, Paul, how are you breaking this tie?
I'll go ahead, Adam.
Well, I haven't read the article, so I can defer to you, Paul, but I can also tell you what Echo said if we want.
Okay.
So she said, look, it's a nuanced exploration of the ideological clash among AI industry titans. The discussions are significant, but they are speculative, and they lack immediate actionable insights, making it more suitable for a detailed leisurely read than an essential executive briefing. For those pressed with time, this can be safely deprioritized without missing critical updates, and she rated it as optional.
I agree, Echo. Paul.
Yeah, in general, these type Forbes articles are, gossip country club discussion on billionaire A. Andreessen sitting on the table here. So I think it's, I do think all the topics that John talked about, it's a really important one. And but for this article, I lean more towards optional.
Okay, I'm putting the gavel on optional on this one.
So David, you have a gavel. John's got chalk. Does each of the moderators have to get their own little?
I have to go actually buy one so I can start slamming it down in the middle of this. Okay, Ankaj, how did we end up today in terms of our ratings? Let's see here. We've got a split. 3 importance. Nvidia, their robotics training platform, important. Trufit, nice use case, important. Snowflake, telling us about their capabilities, important, as opposed to DataBricks, who made another acquisition, notable, but you don't really need to read about it. Again, we had a nice debate about the chip wars, but this article is not the one we want you to tune into around that. And I put the gavel down on optional on the open source, closed source debate. Any announcements from anyone before we go?
Just a quick comment. John's sitting near the Snowflake. I'm here in Chicago at the Applied AI for Distributors conference, 400 people. This conference is for folks like Granger and wholesale distributors, but AI is impacting this industry. And the second thing is that we've had a lot of emails around and customer discussions on the impending change and potentially 20 to 25% drop in web traffic in the next 2 or 3 years, and what that means for SEO and everything else. And we are working on some pieces on that. So look for hopefully a blog this week from me and a few other things in the next few weeks. But it's a really important topic that's starting as it should to get executive attention.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is, I know this is self-promotional, but I think that the WINS framework and the idea of how AI is going to change operating leverage in organizations is still something that hasn't kind of sunk in to the market. And what I mean by that is some of the questions I was getting on the panel last night. It's like, okay, what are the implications? How do I think about what's the reality of it? Where's it going to hit first? And I mean, and this is sitting with, investors and companies that are right at the leading edge of this stuff. So I think that I think there's that. The second thing is even companies that live and die by this stuff. They're still talking just to the leading data part of the organizations. They're selling into the IT shop and so forth. So I think that the inventors of these things are just not understanding how much education is necessary so that the broad market understands this stuff. I was just really struck by that. Even with very sophisticated folks who made a lot of money, building and selling companies, from a corporate standpoint, they just don't. They are living. They're in such a bubble in terms of how they're thinking about the problem. I think the broad implications need a combination of understanding of the wins and education.
John, I couldn't agree more. And the education is not more education on speeds and feeds.
No.
It's education on applying this. That's
Yes.
why wins is good. Apply to my income statement. Help me figure out if a slow follower, a leader is the strategy I need. Do I need to replace half my management team if I'm in the crucible and have a 3-year transformation? I mean, these are the applied topics you're talking about. That it's not open right now, and running around telling CEOs more about speeds and feeds is not going to get their attention.
Exactly.
All right, all good points. Great discussion as always, everybody. Thanks everybody for watching. Ashish, thank you, and faithful follower.